Rage applying is the new quiet quitting. It's when you apply for a job that'll pay you more. What's wrong with that?
Exactly, Scott. I looked through the PGA Tour's counterclaims and I thought to myself, what is wrong with that? I read through this article from Mark Schlabach, ESPN senior writer, titled PGA Tour Seeks to Add Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund to LIV Lawsuit. I think it would be fantastic to break down the points set forth in this counterclaim so that we could see how ridiculous the PGA Tour and its attorneys are. So point one is that LIV intentionally and knowingly caused these players to breach their contractual obligations to the tour by misrepresenting tour contracts. The players have the tour contracts. They have attorneys. I don't even see how this quote-unquote misrepresentation can take place. But of course, LIV intentionally and knowingly caused these players to breach their contractual obligations by offering them a better deal. As per point 2 here,
People are allowed to apply to other jobs. Oh no, you're right. You owe your undying loyalty to the company that's underpaying you because they let you have a potluck last week.
the LIV Golf Tour induced these breaches by offering highly lucrative contracts that made it impossible for players to comply with their tour contracts. You offered so much money, there's no way they were going to stick with the PGA Tour.
Players have made their choice, right? Players are playing on that tour.
That's not crazy. That's not illegal. They got a better deal. So now you may wonder, well, if the PGA Tour had these players under contract, maybe there's some clauses that had penalties involved so that if the player breached these contracts, they'd owe the PGA Tour money. Wait a second. The LIV Golf Tour took care of those issues too. They provided extensive indemnification and hundreds of millions of dollars to compensate LIV players for these breaches. So now you've already seen in this counterclaim that the PGA Tour suffered no damages outside of those already stipulated and accounted for in the contracts and paid for by the LIV Golf Tour. So what's the problem here?
Why do they need us so badly? Because those players have chosen to sign multi-year lucrative contracts.
Jay Monahan, they don't need you so badly. The PGA Tour hasn't suffered any damages outside of those already stipulated in the contract. You're paid in full. You got to let these players go. People nowadays, I don't know if you know this, PGA Tour, and what could be potentially viewed as monopoly, people are allowed to switch employers. And if you want to penalize them and it's set forth in the contract and those damages are paid out to you already, then you have no recourse. You can't tell the people that they're forced to play on the PGA Tour. I don't know if the PGA Tour attorneys realize we don't have indentured servitude contracts anymore. 2023 to the PGA Tour attorneys, indentured servitude is illegal. The counterclaim continues. Recently produced documents confirm that PIF and Mr. Al Rumayyan played an active and central role in orchestrating these breaches for their own benefit and are equally liable for the harm caused to the tour. Again, on the player level, the PGA Tour already recouped any damages in terms of any harm that was done from these players by breaching the contract. It's already stated in the counterclaims where they said they were indemnified. What's interesting here is how the PGA Tour is trying to go after what they probably consider more of the deep pockets and adding PIF and Mr. Al Rumayyan to the defendants. And what's more interesting is how Randall Chambly on the Golf Channel a few weeks ago tried to encourage this piercing of the corporate veil. This is from Cornell Law School's website. Piercing the corporate veil refers to a situation in which courts put aside limited liability and hold a corporation's shareholders or directors personally liable for the corporation's actions or debts. While the law varies by state, general courts have a strong presumption against piercing the corporate veil and will only do so if there has been serious misconduct. What would be considered the serious misconduct here? Making Jay Monahan unhappy? Breaking up a potential PGA Tour monopoly? Here, Rich Lerner asks Randall Chambly what he thinks about these PGA Tour players getting these releases to go play a tournament in Saudi Arabia.
They're going to play an event in a country where the leader of the country, which sponsors LIV, is suing the PGA Tour.
Brandel leaves out the fact that LIV Golf is suing the PGA Tour for violating antitrust laws.
You know, it'd be like your neighbor who is suing you but throwing a good party and you decide to go over and attend it. It makes no sense to me.
Brandel, your analogy makes no sense to me. It would make more sense if you said your neighbor who was suing you for violating antitrust laws was throwing an event and paying independent contractors a lot of money to show up and perform at the event. That's a little bit more apples to apples. When's the last time you see a show where one of the experts on the matter shows up with notes scribbled on a yellow pad and then spreads the papers all over his desk and then obviously is reading off these little bullet point notes he made, and when he gets stuck, he goes and recycles the same talking point over and over again? Brandel Chambly's been talking about sports washing for at least 7-8 months now. Go look at his other interviews. He can't wait to get the word sports washing out. Now the rest of this segment, Brandel is just going here and there, treading water, and at some parts drowning.
I think the sports washing nature.
Homeboy Brandel can't even say a sentence without saying sports washing twice right off the bat and with increasing hand speed each time he says it.
Besides the fact that where the money is coming from is tough to stomach.
More on the sports washing theme.
There are other issues about the corrupting influence that it has on sport that I have a problem with.
The following is the definition of really reaching to prove your point. What Brandel then says is that sports washing corrupts sports because it stops you from striving, something along those lines. And as his example, he uses Colin Morikawa.
And that is what you pay to watch. You pay to watch somebody risk.
So Brandel has just gone on a long, incoherent spiel about how sports washing corrupts you because you're not going to strive to get better. And to strive to get better, you have to take risks.
He went and tried to get better around the greens. He went and tried to get better on the greens. Now, changing his technique and taking his attention away from his long game is a risk.
If Brandel Chambly says that sports washing stops you from taking risks, he has a pretty low threshold for what risk-taking is if he thinks it's focusing on your short game and taking attention away from your long game like Colin Morikawa apparently has.
And that's what sport does. You know, it motivates people to their highest purposes.
Which for golfers is presumably shooting a low score.
And sports washing isn't about players getting better.
You just said that one of the issues you had with sports washing is that it's a disincentive for players to get better.
It's about obfuscating. The very nature of LIV. You think about LIV. Almost every tour that you can think of, the name of the tour is eponymous.
So now Brandel goes off on another tangent about how LIV is hiding its true purpose and the true backers, which are Saudi Arabia and in the PIF fund, because it doesn't have Saudi Arabia and PIF fund in the name of its tour. Watch the hilarity ensue.
Hey, the South African tour.
It's in South Africa.
The Australasian tour.
I'm guessing Australia and Asia makes Australasia.
The Japanese tour.
Say it at home with me, everybody. Japan.
The PGA tour, Professional Golfers Association of America.
Wait a second. It isn't the PGA Tour of America. It's the Professional Golfers Association Tour. That's the PGA. And there's also a separate entity, the PGA of America. So now, Brandel, by your definition, is the PGA Tour obfuscating its roots?
The very nature of the name of LIV is meant to obfuscate. It's not called the MBS Tour, Mohammed bin Salman Tour, or the Saudi Wealth Fund Tour. It's called LIV Golf. Now, I don't think that's an accident.
You're correct, Brandel. It isn't an accident. LIV, which is very clever, equals the Roman numerals of 54, and there are 54 holes played at each LIV event. I also read into the name LIV Golf a certain amount of enthusiasm towards golf, like live life, live golf.
I think they're trying to hide the purpose of the tour, which is to hide the horrors of the regime that funds the tour.
This interview continues with Rich Lerner asking Brandel Chambly about Ronaldo going to play soccer in Saudi Arabia.
He is helping to ensure the ongoing whores, and so to some extent he's an agent of those whores.
And the women golfers who are interested in the Saudi money, to which Brandel responds.
Again, that's a head scratcher for me. You can't find a more misogynistic country in the world. Again, just look at their male guardianship laws.
I had to listen to Brandel Chambly talk for 7 or 8 minutes. The least you can do at this point is subscribe, share, and like.